this one paragraph talking about a year without a summer in the 21st century. We're talking about 2023. And I think that goes hand in hand with what you're just talking about right there, a year without a summer. So meaning we're going to have a year that's not conducive for planting, farming. It's going to cause even more chaos out here. These people, like you said, the hungry people, they're going to get desperate, and they will know, they're going to be easily manipulated when they're desperate, right? It creates a dangerous place for everybody, not just, the big cities, but even out here in where we're at in the farther out. What kind of scenario can you paint if we do have a year without a summer?
Maybe that'll wake people up. Maybe the events have to get bigger and bigger where they can't really be explained by the current narrative before people can kind of look past that veil. But delivering information to them, and like you said, a lot of people are willing to wake up now, are really much more willing to accept different ideas as to why the world it is today. Because if you look at the world, it's just a normal, same, common sense human being, and you look at the world today, you go, there's a huge problem. Something is very wrong. This is an insane planet. How did it get here? So people are starting to understand that they have been pushed into the corner on purpose. The closure of all the small businesses across the world and this COVID thing, but you could leave like Costco open, but mom and pop that gave you the alternative to get outside the system. And that's the whole thing. Like you look at how planned it's been. They closed down your escape valve to get off the digital rationing card in the central bank digital currency system. With all the mom and pop supermarkets and these kind of businesses around, even if they said, well, you're going to have, you can't go into Costco with your digital rationing card and your CBDC without whatever, in addition to being able to access that. Well, you could just go down to the local market and, your grandfather's friend or something like, oh, you need some food? Cool. Now forget the ration card. We don't need that. They removed any safety valve. So you're cattle corralled right into corporate control. And I hate the way the government did. They go, it wasn't a government mandate. It wasn't a government law that made you do this. It was a corporate. They can do what they want. It was a corporate thing. And then they all in unison decided to, you got to wear the mask. You got to do this. You got to do that.
Well, that's that corporatocracy stuff that we always talk about.
Corporatocracy,
yeah, corporatocracy. That's it. If people can't wake up to that, you're going to be left in the dust. But yeah, I don't want any part of that. None of us do. We don't want any part of that. We want to be able to, live locally and buy and sell locally.
So kind of backtracking a little bit, I want to paraphrase and just say the same thing in a different way and see if I got this, David. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like I'm going to use my vocabulary on this. The controlling elite who understand they have let's say I have my theories as to why they have a higher IQ, and it goes back to the Nephilim and all that stuff. But these elites who have these bloodlines and they're controlling us, but in addition to that, they're opportunistic and they're seeing that there is a natural cycle coming that's going to purge the population, and they are trying to position themselves in the best spot possible to control what is left of humanity. Is that a fair breakdown?
I would say yes, because you look at the transition that they keep talking about to this electric economy. It doesn't work with today's population. It doesn't. But if the population were to be, 50% reduced, it works at that point. This time it's different. What's ahead is the worst in history. The Wall Street Journal warned, just don't sit there, do something. Have you checked the value of your home, your 401k? Many Americans are too afraid to look at their 401k and their IRA account statements. But you've seen the price of eggs and groceries and interest rates and credit cards all increasing. Meanwhile, China, Russia, Saudi Arabia are moving away from the US dollar, discussing the petro yuan. Isn't it time you took retirement matters into your hands with a self-directed IRA with physical gold and silver, not paper, physical gold and silver? Patriot Gold Group is introducing the 2023 Recession Protection No Fee for Life IRA. Call the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late. Mention the Adapt 2030 channel. You're going to get first-class service from Patriots Protecting Patriots. Remember, Patriot Gold Group offers the No Fee for Life IRA, where your 401k or IRA can be in physical gold or silver on qualifying rollovers. That's 888-546-7020. And do remember, Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs top-rated gold IRA dealer for 6 years in a row. That's 888-546-7020. And now on with the video. Same with the food system. Same with the 15-minute cities. Like, it's really difficult to control 8 billion people and say you're only allowed 15 minutes outside your zone unless the population was greatly reduced and a lot of duress and a huge amount of loss and catastrophic loss of business, economy, supply chain, medicine. And it brings us back, like, say, to that more pioneering lifestyle. At that point, if you had tech, if you had like Boston Dynamics robots running around, you could definitely control a populace, automated. But again, it puts us in the driver. That same kind of thought process. Is there a more ancient culture that continues to hold that technology as we on the surface go through the reset? Or we, let's say on the surface of the planet, it could be off planet, under planet, whatever. There's a million stories through antiquity of, where other entities around in our solar system or galaxy reside. So if you think about it like that, because it always comes back, there's always this one-upmanship of technology that remains that allows one group after these resets to control the other group. And it does seem for at least the last 6,000 years that this same group that is still working to control humanity through this reset is the same ones that were in control of were successful in controlling the same reset 6,000 years ago and again and again and again, because they're still here.
It's the same bloodlines. Yeah. Same bloodlines that were in control then. We traced the names back. One of our chat room members, one of our contributors, she had traced that stuff back down, and those names go way back. How many times we heard that, Outcast?
And the more I learn, the more. I'm glad to hear him say it too. And the more we learn about it, it seems like they completely believe, and I believe it's possible that it's true, but they believe that they are ancient Babylonians, descended from Nimrod, and what they're trying to do currently is fulfill Nimrod's dream of a one world language, one world religion. I mean, everything that they're pushing on us goes back to Nimrod and the Babylonians and the Tower of Babel. Even their new one world religion center that they're building looks exactly like illustrations that we've seen. Not exactly, because it's not the same scale, but looks in design looks very similar to the Tower of Babel. And I just, it's fascinating, but it makes sense at the same time. Now, David, I want to, I'm going to use some of my vocabulary on you and see if it resonates, or see if you think this jives with what you're saying too. Because, would you say you made a comment about sounding too woo-woo? This is, as a Christian, this is as woo-woo as I get my language, but I think there's crossover from my faith into woo-woo. But I like to say to people that I'm read, I go, listen, if you notice when you turn on the television, it doesn't matter if you're watching movies, television, news, or even music nowadays, it lowers your frequency. And so, for example, my wife and I'll be flipping channels and we'll see this. What's this new show about? Oh, it's about the zombie apocalypse. Okay, well, it's kind of dark. What's this about? It's about vampires. Oh, what's this new show about? Well, it's about a group of people in the apocalypse and they're under control. Okay, what's this show about? And every show it lowers your whole vibration, your whole frequency is brought down. Where when you turn that off and you connect with the creator, you raise your frequency and you're less controlled. I know I'm probably just scratching the surface of the depth of what you believe, but am I in range when I'm talking about this?
Well, absolutely. And then I'll take it a step further and then, go right back to what you were talking about. The elite of we're not talking about, Sumerian kings lists or anything like that, where these beings were supposedly living 10,000 years in a lifespan. Just in today's modern world, I don't know if you're familiar with the term magnetic birthing.
No.
If you're born in a very low magnetic field, like solar minimum, if you look at the 11-year solar cycle and it has its peak and then it's, you're at solar maximum, solar minimum. If you're born in a solar minimum 1 or 2 year period, right at the very bottom with zero sunspots for a year and a half or so, your lifespan's greatly increased compared to somebody born at solar maximum. And it seems that the pregnancies and the births coincide with a lot of world leaders and families, which you referred to being born at these low magnetic field times. Now, if you understood the cycle, Like there was something called the centennial minimum, where in the early beginning of the 1900s, around 1911, there was a 100-year low in solar activity. So anybody born during that solar minimum period of 2 really low solar activity cycles, but at the solar minimum of those centennial minimum, we're living to be over 100 years on the average. So knowing what's coming up in 2024 with the second magnetic field setting up with the interplay of the gas giants, this is October of 2024. Earth is in the center, and then we have the sun, and it's stepping down, and it's playing with its magnetic field. So we'll have 2 looping toroid fields overlapping on top of each other as we go into the next solar minimum. So with that, if there was some interplay of those 2 fields and it was at a 0 field, anything born during that time would possibly be the humans that would start to live 200 years. And it gets really interesting to the magnetic birthing on the elite of the planet, how they plan their pregnancies to coincide with solar minimum to get to a longer average lifespan. And this is why a lot of these families, look at anybody at the highest echelons today and look at their birthdays and then match it up with the solar minimums, and you'll start to see it's startling. You know, if you're looking at something that's above an 80% correlation, it's pretty strong. And that's where you start to get with the big names of not only world leaders and elites going back on the family lines, but who's alive right now that's in their 90s, that's in these positions that still seems to be pulling a few puppet strings. They're back and they were born during these low magnetic fields, either one of those to still be in their 90s and creeping toward 100. And many of them still living well into the 80s. And it looks like they've wired it down into the magnetic birth anomaly and figuring out that low magnetic field extends human lifespans at birth.
Yep. We always talk about these people knowing knowledge, things that we have never known, and they hold on to that knowledge.
David, I've never heard this before. So would it be fair to say that somebody like, a George Soros or a Nathan Rothschild, some of these people seem to have very long lives. Is that kind of who you're alluding to? Or?
That's exactly what I'm referring to. Yeah, their families have been doing that for thousands of years. Now think about that. If your family bloodline was just 10 years longer on a 1,000-year period, how much extra power would that give you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
How much?
You just blew my mind.
It gives them the power that they need. And you compare or you pair that up with these weather events, these grand solar minimums. They know when that's coming. They have a completely different calendar than what we look at. They know, that we are not privy to. We don't learn this stuff in government education.
No, but I mean, that longer lifespan, I never thought about it like that. If you've got a longer lifespan in your families, you've got a longer time to play out your plan. And if you've got a cohesive plan from generation to generation, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
It gets handed down. Just think about the banking cartels or the banking families. Take that right back to the Orsinis and Rothschilds, all that stuff. So
and the Sassoons,
yeah. Wow. That is
David,
that's big.
David, you know a lot, dude. You're blowing my mind. It's amazing.
Wait, can I throw another one at you? This might be the icing on the cake. It might be the top of the cherry, but I'd love to throw it on top of the sundae here.
Yeah.
The problem is that we'll use Soros or Rothschilds. Okay, so they're into their mid 90s. When you start to see these low magnetic field birthing events, when the human lifespan would be greatly expanded due to a 400-year low in solar activity, a 150-year low in solar activity, all the regular people like me, anybody that's just out there would be born in the same magnetic field. Now, the credit goes to Ransom Godwin, my co-host on my show, for doing a lot of research into this. And he started to dissect it and say, once we get these low magnetic field births where just the general populace will live to be 90, 95, just based on the magnetic field intensity, there's always a war about 20 years later to wipe out that population and generally take out the men of the population. And then you always hear those stories where the women live so long. Well, he's done a huge amount of statistical correlation on low magnetic fields on the 100 or 400-year time frame cycle, and then the amount of wars that follow that to clean the population out. So only the elite, if you will, are the ones that would be left.
It makes total sense. Now,
they don't want anybody else taking advantage of the same thing again.
Yeah, it makes total
competition.
sense. you know, that's removing your competition on a planetary scale. Wow. It correlates the same thing as removing competition, the wars, consolidating countries and those borders and all that stuff. Wow.
Jesse, I noticed that K-Dub's got a couple of good questions in the chat field. If you want to present those too, that would be good.
Yeah, they kind of run together. So, it's going back towards where the beginning of the show, what we were talking about. He says, what would happen if all geoengineering ceased tomorrow? Are we at a point where we can't stop? Opinions on that, David?
You would stop, and the cloud cells and the jet streams would need to restabilize.
Right.
They're in their weird position just because they've been bent, heated, twisted, add an ionizing metal into it, hit it, and it just bends local jet streams and cloud cells. Now that would, in the beginning, be a cataclysm of traffic jam in the sky of things overlapping on each other. You have once in a 1,000-year rainstorm, like every storm for, I don't know, probably a decade. Mm-hmm. A lot of the history talks about huge, massive cometary impacts and, disruptions of water vapor in the mesosphere, a lot of disruption in the atmospheric flow, and about 10 years later. So if they were to stop it today, the atmosphere would start to restabilize itself just because that's what it does. It's been here for 1 billion years without your help. So if you just turned it off, it would take a decade or so, but it would restabilize and it would go back to whatever it chose to in the magnetic field state available for it to work in naturally in the solar system right now based on the electromagnetic activity of the sun.
Yeah. And you're talking about those wild jet streams and all that stuff. Remember when the term came in a few years ago, the polar vortex, where it went way up high into Alaska, came right down and split the country in half. So you have a warm side and a cold side going east to west. That's not normal. And anybody who ever thought that was normal, I mean, I was hollering about that years ago when they started coming up with that term. I said, you guys, the jet stream does not do that. It's more of a, north-south, movement altogether. Well, this one was split vertically. And, they make that happen. That's where you get no rain in California. You get warm up in Alaska. That's where you come up, or they come up with these great headlines. Okay. Then they drop and plunge and kill all the buds that are in the springtime, on the east half of Michigan, or on the eastern half of the United States. So, I mean, exactly what you're saying there. They've got these jet streams so jacked up. And for people who don't understand or realize how they can control these things, well, that's a whole nother story. But, we've mentioned that in the past too. Boy, we need God's hand in this now.
Yeah, well, it's always there. It's always there. We just need to tap into it.
David, I got a question for you. I've got a loose theory about that the hurricane that hit Florida pretty hard a couple of months back. And the trajectory of the hurricane seemed to just stop on a dime and make a 40-degree turn. Was that right? The 45-degree
90
turn, but 90-degree turn. It just turned on a sharp angle. It was headed right in line to hit a fertilizing plant, or fertilizer plant. Is it possible? I mean, don't laugh at me if this is a silly question, but is it possible that there's some white hats that were maybe going, we're gonna thwart this attack on this fertilizer plant? Is that a goofy theory?
Well, it's possible. Now think into the future like these elite try to do. So if you're going to manipulate weather, that hurricane, as it moved in whatever way it was bent, yes, I do believe there are divine interventions going on in many shapes and forms that are all around us that we need to pay attention to. That may have been one of them, or they may have needed that storm to bend to then use that to catalyze, to be able to push another weather system further down months in advance after their algorithms on their supercomputers had run through the models of pressure and atmospheric circulation to get that, to have that much moisture that may spin out in a certain density, and then over 2 months that could be used again to push another set of systems, which the reason I say that is the drought on the Mississippi River this year was for sure that block-in pattern that you're talking about. If you were to heat the ionosphere and set over a block-in high, you could dry out any place on the planet, and that's what they did.
Yeah.
Well, the knock-on effect was none of the grains that were harvested could really make it to market this year Mississippi was at the lowest it had been. Even when they were dredging, they couldn't, down in Missouri, they couldn't get it. Places around Tennessee, it widened up a little bit, but the Mississippi River was incredible low. The grain shuttles couldn't move. So what they did is they put all the grain on the side of the shores of the Mississippi and put it under tarp. So at the same ease that it seems that they're able to put blocking highs there, with the effect of storing 100 million tons of grain on the banks of the Mississippi. Imagine that same 90-degree arc. Well, we needed that for 4 months later to create a mega flood to run down the Mississippi and wash all those grains in there and start at a deficit in the beginning of the year. Now,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, well, I'm saying that this whole food shortage is a planned event here. The destruction of the fertilizer plants, the destruction of the food processing plants, the blowing up of the pipeline so there's no methane to actually go in as a feedstock, and then the whole sanctions thing on Ukraine that just stopped all industrialization out of Europe. So that was a purposeful thing. So agriculture is the way. Hungry people are going to do what you say to do, if you're nefarious. So the way they're trying to, at least in my opinion, could be wrong here, but the way I see it in front of me is food is going to be used as the ultimate weapon here. And the more destruction and the more taking it away from your ease of getting it at your fingertips like it used to be, if there is a massive flood and all the grains wash down the Mississippi River, you would watch prices spike in the day and they wouldn't go back down because you can't really get that back. And there was already be a deficit anyway because the soils are so dry. They're still in a drought. Like American agriculture's going to struggle this year.
Yeah.
But in southern, after that time, southern hemisphere, they just aren't going to have any fertilizer. They're running through it. And this planting season right now, the word on the street is they've pretty much used all the stored fertilizer that was in the southern hemisphere. Like there's not much left. So as it comes in the next planting season and they're relying on getting the imports from Europe, they won't be there. It just, every way, shape, and form, this thing is being planned out. And to be able to bend a jet stream or a hurricane to then funnel some moisture into a pattern that could be used months later would not shock me in any way, shape, or form, especially if the AI algorithms are 2 years to 5 years advanced of what we have in the most, what they can let out publicly. These things could probably run in, a year into the future on what you would need to create, what you would need to bend in the ionosphere, how much, how many tons of this metal ionized would create that effect. Quadrillions of calculations per second is probably where it sits to run that whole program, but I'm sure it's being done. And what we see in front of us is public disclosure of the technologies we have at us and how advanced these technologies are. I would venture to say it's far a step ahead in the future of what we're being told.
Wow. It's something crazy.
So game that out. Make as much food loss as you possibly can. That's your game. Game it out and use a supercomputer in every way, shape, form, and fashion, from the economy to the farm inputs to the transportation system, the droughts, the flooding of grains, and just roll it to its Uber, and then you execute that plan based on the AI. That's where I think we sit, somewhere in there somewhere.
Right. You sent me earlier today, a PDF called the Opportunity Cycle, which I'm going to link into the description of the show tonight here, along with all your other links.
Oh, can you give me a couple of days? Because those are for the grain guys out there that wanted to hedge off of some of that information.
Okay. I won't do that then. But I still have a question that I was reading from
Please
it.
Do.
Talking about here in this one paragraph, talking about a year without a summer in the 21st century. We're talking about 2023. And I think that goes hand in hand with what you're just talking about right there, a year without a summer. So meaning we're going to have a year that's not conducive for planting, farming. It's going to cause even more chaos out here. These people, like you said, the hungry people, they're going to get desperate, and they will know, they're going to be easily manipulated when they're desperate, right? It creates a dangerous place for everybody. Not just in the big cities, but even out here in where we're at, in the farther out. What kind of scenario can you paint if we do have a year without a summer?
Well, you could go back to 1816 and get a lot of records on how much the food price rose. So New York delivery of oats before 1815 was about 11 cents or so. And at the end of 1816, it was 92 cents. That's on the oat price. So if you look at the upper altitude, a little bit higher altitude, if you're looking at New York, Vermont, Maine, New Hampshire was definitely hit. And just go back in to look in the Northeast and see how the jet stream, the jet stream is going to do something like you described, but it's going to come over the Great Lakes and it'll get really icy cold east of the Great Lakes and in that, New England area where the rest of the country will be pretty much, I wouldn't say spared, but the effect won't be as great. But it is going to absolutely roll right back over Europe as well, where they're going to have a lot of crop destruction. I think they were like 3 degrees Celsius plus on an average summer temperature down below the normal, which is about 7+ degrees. So the crop losses are going to intensify from here. That's the whole thing you need to understand.
Yeah.
A lot of it's natural. A lot of it's man-made too. So like I say, that was the best description, is riding on top of a natural cycle to obtain the desired income or outcome faster than you could just using one or the other. Scary, isn't it?
Yeah, very scary. I don't like it at all. And it goes hand in hand with, what they're trying to do, what they're trying to achieve. You know about the Georgia Guidestones and, that 500 million in perpetuation is, for population growth or for population worldwide. That's what they want. And it seems like every time they deliver something, whether it's the shots or it's the, with these weather events or taking down our food processing opportunities and our fuel, look at the oil and gas. Look what they've been doing to that. So it's obvious to me that it's a full out attack on humanity. Outcast?
Yeah, where are you going to go, Outcast? I was going to ask you the same. Like, what do you think the next shoe to drop, or what do you think the next event is going to be?
I have one.
Push more interference in that scatter wave, because there's an interference pattern right now out there that's being pushed back at us. For the awakening's happening with its vibration frequency, but at the same time, there's events that keep happening. They get larger and more Hollywood-esque to put that interference wave right back and block in front of you. So Outcast, what do you think in the next big event is going to be, or series of?
Well, you're kind of taking me off guard because depending on the day, I come up with different theories. While I'm thinking about that, Jesse, did you say you have one on deck?
Yeah, I do. It's already been telegraphed. It's already been told, in the summer of 21 in July, I believe, at that one forum, the cyber attack. There's going to be a cyber attack that makes the COVID look like a minor disruption, right? So to me, it's going to be some sort of a global or big enough cyber attack where it's going to take out so much of our electric infrastructure, banking types of things like that, where we're going to be forced to a digital dollar.
And that's by design also to stop the flow of information that's causing the wake up. So it has a double whammy to it. Is that what you're getting at?
That's what I think too. Get rid of they can wrap up that their currency. They can wrap up the one world currency that they always talk about. Control information, shut off all channels. But, that's just something that I thought. But, that's one of Klaus Schwab's dreams.
And David, you were mentioning a supercomputer. Were you alluding to Operation Looking Glass?
I wasn't. I was just talking about, they always talk about D-Wave or, some of this chat GPT and stuff. I mean, that's like kindergarten things of what, in comparison, it'd be like a 1-day-old child in comparison to a 50-year-old adult in terms of technology of what's really out there to process information.
Yeah. Because they're showing us 30 to 50-year-old technology. Like when they show us one of those AI robots that looks like C-3PO with a rubber head on it, and we go, oh, okay, I can tell that's a robot. Well, that's 30 to 50-year-old tech. Is that right? Is that how you feel about it too?
I do believe that there's a lot of technology, especially using Earth's magnetic field to generate power that hasn't been used. And it probably is in, different continuity government facilities where they wouldn't even want to rely on any type of supply chain at all. The Earth's magnetic field doesn't require a supply chain to push magnets against each other to run a spindle to then do the same thing as, spinning using steam. It gets... Wow. Yeah, I would very much say that they are using the technologies and are so many light years ahead, where it looks like this particular set of burning things for combustion to push spindles, use superheated steam or whatever it is to generate thermal volume to push something. to get it to spin. You come back to torsion physics again, a Schauberger and those principles of water vortices to generate power. I mean, we could have outfitted this planet with a bunch of micro hydro or gravitational vortex power plants. We could have done magnetic motors. But why did they take us down this route of internal combustion engines and away from electric when it was rolled out in the 1880s? You got to realize the original electric cars were in the 1880s. And then that went on the shelf for 100 years, and then it suddenly sort of dribbled back. It's being thrust down your throat now. The entire electrical transition to an electric economy, like where did that just pop out of randomly? We were there for 140 years on fossil fuels, and suddenly just like Tuesday, they wake up and, we need to switch. It's not it. It's the frequencies moving faster, so there needs to be new systems put for top-down control, and that's going to be one of them. You got to think about the flow of energy is energy. Something that's a liquid tar is going to move way slower than an electrical field moving down a wire or the electrical interaction in a battery. I mean, you look at the vibratory state of oil or coal, basically just doesn't do much there. Molasses in January compared to electricity, literally that speed of difference is the difference in consciousness and awareness that we're moving into that could be harnessed. But, the elite are actually pushing, they're going, all right, you got 8 billion people that are going to move away from a heavy density, and they're going to start rocketing forward with these new changes coming out of the electromagnetic field of the sun. Like, how are we going to control that? Their brains are going to see different frequencies of light. They're going to process information differently. They're going to see through the BS clearly. Because if they try to put a 1400s system of control and try to bring the Pope back and have the church with their armies, we'd laugh them out of it. But get out of here, So something had to be recreated and created differently for the control. So I think that's the direction we're going. I wanted to talk about hand-cranked radios for just a second because I think they're incredibly important. I myself, I did hours and hours of research on the best hand-cranked radio that could also be a phone charger, emergency light, be able to listen to radio stations, the NOAA weather station in case something happened and you were power out, you could still know what the weather was coming. I personally own this one, the Eaton Red Cross FRX3. It's all hand cranked, and there's a small solar panel on top of it. So it's multiple options for recharging, including plug-in. So if something were to happen, hand cranking is the next best option. I would love solar, but it might be a cloudy day. You might be inside a house, but you're going to have to create the power somehow. You hand crank it, and ergonomically, it slides right in like a book on a bookshelf. I can't believe how long the battery charge lasts on this thing. Even if you leave it up somewhere, like I say, on a bookshelf or in a closet for 6 months, it still has almost a full charge after that period of time.
These crank lights and radios are a must-have. The fact is, if you live anywhere where there's going to be weather, you're going to want to know what's going on. You're going to want to be able to see. And not only that, you're going to want to be able to charge your devices so that you can communicate if the power is out. This is something that you should have if you live anywhere where there's tornadoes, hurricanes, blizzards, etc. It's not whether or not the power is going to go out. It's just when that's going to happen. So these are something that you should have handy with you in your car and your backpack. 2 or 3 of them actually would be a good thing to have in several places so that that you're going to be able to have light. You're going to have information and maybe communication. Those are 3 main things that you need. And plus, it's cool. You can listen to the radio, which makes the time go by if you're waiting for anything, waiting for the power to come back on. You're going to want to keep your mind occupied, and you're going to want to be able to see what you're doing and also be able to communicate if there is the ability to communicate, and you don't want your devices to be dead when that happens.
In an emergency, you would know where people were moving to. For example, out here in East Tennessee, we have massive wildfires sometimes, and they'll be on the radio broadcasting exactly where the fires are moving. And this is off of what you consider like your AM, FM channels that you would get on your car radio. It depends on which frequency that they're using for that, but they will absolutely tell you where emergency resources are stationed. So if you have to abandon your car, you could be able to get to another place as long as you know the roads, or you might have a map. You'll be able to get to some help or main roads where there's emergency vehicles transiting up and down there, have this on the go that it's be able to put it in your hand and still listen to something. It's very lightweight as well. What happens with your communications or even listening to something to be able to understand what's going on in the environment around you? And that's the key to surviving. And Ransom, I know you said this a few times, is understanding your environment, being able to manipulate your environment, and being able to move through that environment to get yourself to safety, to reassess the situation.
Not only that, this is one of the cheapest ways to have insurance, so that, you know, whatever happens, if you're on the move, if you have to grab your bag and go, or if you're just at home trapped when the power's out, not only do you know what's going on, but you know if the situation is going to worsen. Imagine all those people that were in several of the different hurricanes that we've had the last couple of years where the power was out. There were a lot of people that didn't know that was coming, and unfortunately they're no longer with us. But I'm sure that people that were prepared and had some radio, they knew where to go. They knew where the relief aid was going to be. They knew which directions the storms were coming, and they knew which directions the water was coming from. So this is a must-have for anybody that wants to know what's going on, and also just having the light.
And you can click on the link in the description box below. And remember, any purchase that you make with the links, whether it be through the podcast in the description box or on the videos across the multiple platforms after we stream, helps us keep this type of information and this show on air, so we can continue to bring information and share this information, so then you can share with others. This is truly how it's going to be, is sharing of information, forming communities, and have others that also have some of the same information, so we can work as a group versus being on your own alone. That's going to make a huge world of difference, sharing information in communities.
If you wanted to start prepping and taking it serious to get some of these very inexpensive tools that are necessities, why not be prepared for what might happen? Click some of the links, help yourself.
If you appreciate this type of information, click on that link in the description box below. Support our broadcast, our continued mission of bringing you information that can enhance our lives, make our lives more comfortable as we move through this transition.